already won. Ooh, I'm gonna see if X can go live. Talking about they abused the shit out of them, that they were racist, they were transphobic, that they were very, very, very problematic, and my daughter's not exposed to that, and if she is, there's one kid in school that said something inappropriate, and I told her, I was like, you said it again, and beat him upside the head, like, my daughter, she's in love with unicorns and Joshua Siwa, and I heard somebody on one of my lives disrespectful. It was like, how's your daughter feeling one day? Joshua Siwa's got a girlfriend. So I called my daughter and I was like, hey, how do you feel that Joshua Siwa's girlfriend? I was like, yeah, she's come to see her. So I pulled her up on Google or whatever, and she was like, oh, she's so pretty. Right, like my kid don't think like that. She seen, what's the artist name, Youngblood, the rock star dude. She seen him in a dress and her response was, that's a pretty dress, Daddy, I want one like that. You know what I'm saying? I keep telling them, hate is talk, but so is love. Only people we don't like around here is bad people. Now don't get me wrong, there's gonna be times in life where me and my kid bump heads and have disagreements. She's her daddy's daughter. Of course that's on the way. She's stubborn as I am. She's independent as hell, you know what I'm saying? And that's just who she is as a person. But she's never gonna be able to go out and like, oh, my dad was abusive, my dad was racist, or any of that shit. I mean, she's already her daddy's daughter. Me and her, we bump heads sometimes as it is. Especially when she wants something, and it's something, you know, she's a well-behaved child, and I buy her stuff all the time, but there's sometimes when I'm like, you gotta wait a week, and if it's something that she really wants, she's kind of impatient too. Me and her have really bad issues with ADHD, so she'll get this attitude, and I'm like, ugh. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be nice, I'm gonna go in my room, I see you in a mood, where she doesn't want to clean up or do her work or something, because she's in that attitude. My Little Pony's dope. I wish I would have watched it when I was younger, but you know, society was really mean back then. But I've been watching certain movies and stuff, like my youngin', and some of that shit be on point, especially when they turn into like the humans or whatever, and they went to school and all that. Like that was dope. That's what I call it too, being a little diva. She will too. That's what I call it. She being a little diva. She know it too. see him just look at me like, she knows that I know. I ain't going front. That is an interesting, very well put together, thought-provoking cartoon. Like, it makes me think sometimes about shit. And it's not one of those, I'm not gonna say it isn't predictable, because they all follow a certain guideline, but it's not as predictable in the storytelling as other shows are. When they do the human jump and go to school, I thought it was creative how they were able to take their personality as the horses and translate that, especially visually, into personalities of people. Especially because they give you different individuals and styles that kids are going to relate to. They were like, you got a pocket, Rainbow Dash. Why you being an asshole to Applejack? I like the Monster High stuff too. Like, I thought that was pretty creative. Apart and see how they work. Yeah, I think, especially having to deal with all the stress I do on a daily basis. I've been babysitting it, but I think that one right there was an accident. But like, taking things apart and putting them back together, I don't know how old he is or whatever, but they sell like race car toys and the tools, like they have pliers, screwdrivers and stuff, and the cars some of them are pretty big. I mean, they're like decent size. It's perfect for him. He'll be able to like take the tires off with the little four-way and all that shit with it. Like, he even has screwdrivers to take out the big screws from the motor mounts and everything. Oh no! I have two nephews that are very autistic, nonverbal, and there's not much that really catches their attention. But when it comes to being crafty, like building stuff, taking stuff apart and putting it back together, they are well beyond their years. Sad that some people still see like mental health issues and developmental issues and all that as bad things, because they're really not. I I don't think that some shows and stuff should glorify it like they do, because it sets an unrealistic image in society. Like The Good Doctor, it's a great show, but there are points in it where they're trying to set like they're pushing the stereotype, and people need to understand that we're all individuals. You know what I'm saying? Um, but yeah, my nephews, I don't know how they be doing it sometimes. One of them, he'll take something apart and not even look at it while he's taking it apart and still not gonna put every piece back into it. Hypersensitive as in like senses, oh, hyperactive. Yeah, I mean, but ADHD is still a form of autism. It is on the spectrum, and it depends on how bad it is. Right, and like that's my thing. With my nephews, I think their parents do a great job, and the way they see it as is that he's not different.
Watch this video. I'll be right back. No one is free until we are all. How did we get here? Where they corrupted me. I'm making plans for business. I needed to get distributed back in the same floor. They hit me, but I was on the run. And that's pretty sure this shit ain't still in the center with a couple of celebrations. They want to damage my case. I had to stop both of it. I got that something.
Oh, not them reporting the video where they admit in 4K that they spread nasty lies and vicious and malicious rumors about me as propaganda, just so they can try to get someone to believe it in hopes. Alright. So you just gonna lie? Yeah. And I did a video where I was talking about your reported on.
a very big change from last week when the agency had the number at 73%. There's also growing pushback tonight to the CDC's latest guidance, reducing the isolation period for people who test positive but show no symptoms to 5 days, down from 10. Critics say this evolving message isn't just confusing, it's dangerous.
The CDC should be loud and clear about implementation here because no worker should be forced to come to work when they are still sick. And that is, I believe, what we are going to see here. We're very concerned about that.
It's only going to lead to more illness, more cases. This is when you should be tightening your controls, not lessening them.
Well, tonight, Dr. Fauci was back on TV defending the CDC's decision.
What happens is that you're isolated for 5 days, and then if you're still asymptomatic, at the end of that 5 days, you can go out and do your job and re-enter society, hopefully getting functions of society normal, but you have to wear a mask. Early on in infection, for the first several days, you have more of a likelihood to have a high level of virus and to be capable of spreading it. As you get into the second half of that 10-day period, we know that the virus in general, not for every single 100% of the people, but for most of the time, for most of the people, that level of virus diminishes to the point where the CDC feels, and I don't disagree with them at all, that wearing a mask is ample protection during that second half of a 10-day period. When you balance that against the importance of trying to get people back functioning in society, because the alternative is something that no one wants, and that's to shut down completely.
Now, when it comes to saving lives, hospitals on the front lines are bracing for an expected surge of COVID patients in the weeks to come. Many are already seeing a steady rise in COVID admissions. The administration is preparing to deploy 1,000 U.S. service members to help medical staff at hospitals nationwide. Hospitals are also facing a rapid increase in the number of children admitted for COVID. NBC News reports that in the last 4 weeks, the average number of children hospitalized with COVID is up 52%. 5 states, Florida, Illinois, New Jersey, New York, and Ohio, are reporting the most admissions. Also tonight, the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Capitol riot has now struck a deal with the White House to stand down on some of the documents requested from the Trump administration. The New York Times notes the agreement, quote, does not represent a major policy shift for the administration. President Biden still rejects former President Donald J. Trump's claim that all internal White House documents pertaining to the riot be withheld on the grounds of executive privilege. The Times adds the Trump records involved in the agreement were ones the Biden White House deemed as sensitive or unrelated to the investigation. There is also news about the criminal investigation into the pro-Trump mob that carried out the siege on the Capitol. Today, a federal judge, by the way, appointed by Donald Trump, refused to dismiss an indictment charging 4 alleged leaders of the far-right Proud Boys with conspiring to attack the Capitol. Judge Timothy Kelly rejected the defense attorney's arguments that the 4 are charged with conduct that's protected by the First Amendment right to free speech. With that, let's bring in our leadoff guests on this Tuesday night. Philip Rucker, Pulitzer Prize-winning senior Washington correspondent for the Washington Post, co-author with Carol Leonnig of the New York Times bestseller, Iowa Can Fix It. Dr. Irwin Redletter, founding director of Columbia's National Center for Disaster Preparedness, who advises us on public health. He's also a professor of pediatrics at Albert Einstein College of Medicine. And former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, who spent 25 years as a federal prosecutor, she hosts the podcast Sisters-in-Law, along with Kimberly Atkins-Storr, Jill Weinbanks, and Barbara McQuaid. Good to see all of you. So, Irwin, we again seem to be at the receiving end of some confusing messaging from the CDC and the Biden administration as they try to combat this Omicron variant. What do you think's going on here? Could we be doing better?
Yeah, we could be doing better, Chris, and the problem is that there's continued amount of confusion because the science or the data that's coming in is causing there to be changes in how we're managing people who are positive. But the messaging is very confusing. They need to get their act together. I understand the science, and it's basically exactly what Dr. Fauci said, which is that the point that you get infected yourself and would be
again as I'm coming into work tonight and I'm seeing their Broadway shows that are shut down. Hugh Jackman tested positive for COVID. He's on Broadway now. That it is about the science and not too much about the economy, even though we heard the acknowledgement from Dr. Fauci that that's part of it too.
Right, Chris. So, the question is it entirely 100% public science? No, and it never can be. There is a bit of the economy concern in there, and there's also a bit of the politics inserted in there. But the problem is that we do have to get it all straightened out. So everyone watching
for
to understand what are the rules we have to follow. Now, the other thing, Chris, is that the CDC must do a better job in explaining and giving the caveats. Like we're making a policy change, but folks, we're getting more information in, and maybe next week we'll have to change it. Right now, here's what we're recommending. People are not comfortable with uncertainty. I'm not, and I'm sure most people aren't in this situation, but we're going to have to get used to it, unfortunately, Chris.
Well, Phil, we heard this earlier from the Republican governor of Arkansas. Take a listen.
It's not a time for shutdowns. It's not a time for repressive measures. Let's work our way through it and all survive together to keep our economy going at the same time addressing the urgent need of our workforce and our increased vaccinations.
It feels to a lot of people like, Philip, that it's this shift, the feeling that COVID's with us, it's here to stay, and we have to maneuver, figure out how to live with it and not ruin the economy. Is that the White House strategy here? What are you hearing?
Well, Chris, the political strategists inside the White House are well aware of the peril here for President Biden and for the Democratic Party because there simply is not an appetite among the American people for a return to what everyone experienced in those early months of the pandemic in the spring of 2020, the lockdowns, the shutdowns, the continuing work from home, the restaurants being closed. Now that the economy has largely reopened and we've survived sort of the Delta variant and trying to move our way through the Omicron variant, there's a real desire around the country, especially when you get out of the major cities like New York and Washington, to push through, to try to safeguard against people getting sick and hospitalized and ill, of course, but to not shut things down. And that could eventually come into conflict with some of the scientific findings. And one of the dangers, I think, for the Biden White House and the administration right now is convincing the American people that all of these decisions that are being